guys. My story is about a young woman who discovers her brainwashed upbringing when she falls in love with a black man amidst a social justice movement that shakes their city, which is New York City. So, having recently moved to Manhattan, Macy Baker is stumbling through her days. She's trying to make a life for herself, trying to find her purpose, all that jazz. That is until she meets Thomas. They begin bonding over their interest in books and pretty quickly become quite fond of each other. A few weeks after meeting, the city erupts when 12-year-old Anthony was murdered in cold blood by a police officer when walking home from his friend's house in their southeast neighborhood of Queens. This comes after a string of similar stories that begin to fill the headlines. There are protests in every neighborhood, and Thomas pretty quickly begins to discover how little Macy really knows about the world. With newly opened eyes, Macy sees how Thomas is treated around her and questions why she is just now realizing the injustices that her new boyfriend is facing. Things get worse in the city. There are riots and shootings, and Macy's parents in Connecticut begin to worry about her and beg her to come back home. She thinks about it, but after yet another act of pretty blatant racism towards Thomas, and this time with one of his friends around, Malia, Macy decides to stay. She participates in protests alongside Thomas and his friends, although feeling kind of like an outsider. She doesn't really know her place and is kind of afraid to speak up and use her voice. That is until Thomas gets arrested while walking over to Macy's apartment one night. And fearing for his life, she goes to her parents for bail money. And after being turned away, she feels a betrayal for the way that she was raised and the lack of perspective that her parents allowed into their home, and it all becomes very, very clear to her. And the story comes to an end when Macy finally gets Thomas out of holding at the police station, and she gets vulnerable in order to be an ally in this fight alongside him.